This episode is brought to you by EFG Holding, a trailblazing financial institution with a universal bank in Egypt and the leading investment bank in the Middle East and North Africa. Tell me a little bit about the first steps into the world of work. What were you interested in? Did you pursue what you wanted to pursue, or did you end up doing work that you thought you should be doing?
So my story with work is an interesting one, actually. I started very early on. I started work probably when I was 15 or 16. I decided I'm not taking money from anyone, even my father, and I'm going to be the super independent girl. I had many summer jobs and internships. I worked as a waitress. I worked as a receptionist. I taught Arabic for elderly. So many jobs, private tutoring, and so on and so forth. And then my dream was to become a movie director. And I had Yusuf Shaheen as my idol. And I remember I met him once in the airport and I was going to faint, when I just saw him and shook hands. I have great admiration for this person. And then I had to convince my parents, specifically my mom, that this is the career I want. And for cultural reasons, she stopped this dream. And she wanted me to pursue actually the dream that she wasn't able to continue because of the war situation and because of us.
For herself.
For herself. And me being so inspired by my mom and so connected to her, I decided I'm going to do this. And I studied international affairs, diplomatic and consular services, and development studies. And then I was perceived as the diplomat of the family. And I was getting ready for my exams to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In parallel, I applied through recruitment agencies for all the NGOs and everything that has to do with the diplomatic relationship. My sister back then was graduating from business and marketing, and she sent her CV through the same channel. And Destiny plays its role. They just switched our CVs, and Maya starts her career in an NGO, and I start my career in banking.
How funny.
And I had I don't know, I remember there were 5, 6 banks calling me for interviews, I had the President's Award and straight A student.
Yes.
So this is
Yes, you were a good candidate for
good
them.
candidate for an entry for an entry student. I did all the interviews. I thought, okay, I'll start until the exams of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs come. And I got stuck for 10 years.
You got sidetracked.
I got
Yeah.
sidetracked.
Well, you obviously enjoyed it.
I loved it.
And
I
it's
loved
funny
it.
because you would never have considered that
Exactly.
as an option for yourself.
At all. At all. I'm someone who loves growing where I am. And I think this is one of the special things that I always do. I don't take the role as it is, as a job description.
Yeah.
I always like to create and innovate and grow my role.
It also strikes me that you like consistency.
Yes.
And you like to be in one place for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
Which is unusual in today's world.
Absolutely.
Because people jump from thing to thing. They get headhunted quickly to leave. They get bored. They want to go start their own thing. But you're very much in a very traditional job path, actually. Like
Yes.
people used to do it a long time ago.
Yeah. I'm not that young.
No, but maybe that's why, actually. Maybe
Yeah.
because you had that exposure to people doing that.
Absolutely.
And that was your model.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, change is always good.
Yes.
And we don't want to be blockers for other people to grow and to move as well.
Yes.
But as long as your job is giving you the satisfaction and the creativity to innovate and to change within the same environment, I mean, why not?
Absolutely.
Why not?
Absolutely.
And I think, within my Lebanese experience, I had different experiences, even within marketing,
Of course. Of
from
course.
internal communication to external communication to media relations to comms. So the role by itself
Yeah.
expanded.
And in the end, you ended up using your diplomatic skills.
Exactly.
Because in these
Exactly.
kinds of roles, firstly, you're doing cross-country work,
Absolutely.
you're managing a team, you're growing a department. That all takes a lot of negotiation, a lot of diplomacy.
Absolutely. And I always tell, the younger people that I
Yep.
deal with
Yep.
that education is not really about the exact content that you acquire. It's about the skills that you acquire. And I
I
think the
agree.
diplomatic and consular services, they help me a lot in my interpersonal
Of
skills.
course.
I would say, how to deal with the C-level people, complicated situations, complex situations, crisis management, all of those, which eventually I'm still using
Of
today
course. Of course.
in my
And
job.
I think, as you said, I mean, you can have all the degrees you want, but if you don't know how to deal with people, then it's useless.
Exactly.
It's completely useless.
Exactly.
Your husband and you met a while ago, well before you got married, you decided to get married, and then it didn't happen, and then you got together again. So walk me through just with a big picture. When you met the first time, you were still living in Lebanon,
Mhm.
and you had decided to get married, and you had moved ahead with all the preparations, and then you had been together at that point, what, a couple of years?
Almost, yeah.
Almost. And what happened? Well, why did you stop and not go through with
I
it?
was the runaway bride.
You were the runaway bride.
Yes.
Julia Roberts is in my
Julia
show.
Roberts.
Yes.
Malak Roberts.
You're Malak Roberts.
Yeah, actually, I panicked. I panicked back
Mhm.
then. Maybe because it's again back to my consistency part and the love
Yes.
of the consistency.
Yes.
I just thought I'm not ready for this very big move.
And were you young?
I was very young.
You were very.
I was 21 probably.
Oh, no
Yeah.
wonder.
Uh.
Malak, that's a baby.
I
I
was
know when I
very
was 21, I couldn't, think further
yeah.
ahead than the next week.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very young.
I was very young.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, I still need to stay with my parents. I want my mom.
Yes, 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 yes.
And it was a very big change in terms of, moving to another
And
country.
he was already in Egypt, so you would have had to move at that time
Yes,
here.
yes,
Yes.
yes. The
Okay.
plan was to move
Yeah.
to Egypt. He's Egyptian as
Yes.
well. So although the Lebanese and the Egyptian cultures are very similar, but
Yes.
definitely there are also
Of
differences.
course.
So I don't think I was mature enough to grasp those
Fair enough.
differences from both
Of
sides,
course.
actually.
21 is very young.
Yeah, so I decided to
To not go through with it.
exactly, and in a very healthy and friendly way, at least from my side.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's very impressive that you had the ability at that age to say no.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of girls and boys who marry young, and a lot of the time it doesn't work. But you said no before the wedding, which is the more important thing.
I was really surprised that my parents supported me, gladly
Yes,
surprised, I
yes.
would say, and they made me, make the choice and be accountable for it as well.
I think, Malak, when you're close to your parents
Mm.
and you have an open line of
Yes.
communication, they know that you know what you need,
Exactly.
and they are there to support
They
you,
trust you.
and they trust
They
you,
trust you. They trust you.
So you're very lucky to have had that. I have that with my family, and it's a privilege.
Absolutely.
So that's a very nice thing that they had your
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They had my back.
exactly.
That's the right
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
That's the right word. 10 years later, we bump again into each other by mere coincidence in a third country. Um, and then, the relationship ignites again as friends first. And I think he was very much present in the deterioration of my mom's health situation, him and his family. And I think that was a very big green flag, I would say.
Very positive thing.
Very positive
Taban.
thing from two mature people, I would say. And here we are, married with a son.
And your mother must have been very surprised How was her reaction to
Surprising,
the second phase of this
yes. So
relationship?
surprisingly, actually, my mom at the very first time, she wasn't the happiest because she wanted me at some point of time, even if I'm going to go and live abroad, to come back to Lebanon. And marrying someone who's not Lebanese, I mean, that's not an option. So she always questioned this, and
Yes.
I think she was a bit happy when I broke up. I have to admit. The interesting part is that, every time I met someone or somebody proposed, the official way,
Yes.
she would say, one day you will marry Amr.
Interesting.
And I was like, Mom, I'm in Asia, he's in Africa, and there's absolutely no connection. And then when we met again, I think she was pleasantly surprised because she knows, that there are the
The and the
fundamentals.
spark was always
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But it's interesting, Malak, how it's all about timing.
It's all about
It's
time.
all about
It's
timing
all
because
about
the
time.
person was right for you from the
Yes.
beginning, but you weren't ready.
Right person, wrong time,
Yeah.
maybe. And I think definitely this 10 years gap has benefited us both.
Yes.
The exposure that we both got in our personal and our professional lives made us appreciate the other person, and the maturity
Mm.
that we
Yeah.
acquired. I think that was a game changer, I would say.
Yeah. Tell me about Visa. What is it about Visa that attracted you when you were working in marketing first? And what is Visa like in the Middle East? What is Visa like in Egypt? Give me a little bit of a background to
So
it.
pre-visa, whenever I used to write a brief to my agency, there was a section where we used to put kind of a referral or, a company or a brand
Mhm.
as an example to
Right.
whatever brief we want to have. And surprisingly, Visa was always one of those examples that
Hmm.
I've put. I've always loved the brand for what it stood
Yeah.
for what it looked for visually as well. And definitely the principles behind it. It's just this, there is one company that can literally connect millions and millions of people every second from around the world. I mean, what better cause
Hmm.
could any company have?
Yeah.
Um, so when I was looking for jobs in Egypt, definitely it was the first one that I've applied for. And I still remember the call that I got from the recruiter from London telling me you have an interview. I was in my small office in Beirut and I was literally jumping all over. It was a dream
You
for
were
me.
really happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, when I moved into the company, I realized how lucky I am even further.
It met your expectations?
It exceeded my
Wow.
expectations, I would
Because
say.
that's very unusual.
Yes, it
Yeah.
exceeded my
Yeah.
expectations. I think the people, the culture, th- there's a strong belief in what we want to do and the change that we want to do around the world. And I think it really stems out from the vision that our founder had. So our founder, Dihak, said, it was at the time where money was all cash or checks. Okay, why don't we digitize this?
Hmm.
And why don't we make the money move in the speed of light? And he did it. I mean, this guy was a visionary. And this is where the name of Visa came. It's the access that you give to all those people, to me sending money to you, helping my son, going to the club, paying for him, paying for
It's
our
the ease of it.
the
Yeah.
convenience,
The
the ease
convenience
of
of it.
it,
Yeah.
the access that it gives to many people, the capabilities.
And then at some point they were looking for a country head and they obviously looked
Yes.
internally. How did that come about and when was that? And how did you adjust your role? How did you make that jump into a completely different kind of work actually?
So in career, I strongly believe that, everyone owns his or her own career path and trajectory. So I was very much aware of what I wanted to do. I think the marketing kind of satisfied the passion that I had for um, the movie direction and the art person in
The
me,
creative
the
side of you.
creative side of
Yeah.
me. And this is a very big side that I still have today.
Yes.
And I always tell even my team now in business, when we're pitching, when we're doing any business, it's all about storytelling.
Yes, of
I'm a
course.
strong
Of
believer in
course.
storytelling. So I was very clear on having a CMO track. And this is where I was very focused in terms of education, upskilling myself, growing my role, so on and so forth. And then I had our GM back then coming to me saying, I want you to apply for the country manager's role. I was like, I'm not, you're crazy. I'm an advertising person, I'm a comms person. And he said, at this level, we're looking for a set of skills, not a set of competencies. So I don't want you to be a technical person. I want the leadership skills that you have and that we have experienced with you in several mega projects. So I was someone who always raised his hand or her hand in, putting my nose in different.
You were proactive
Exactly.
about your role.
About my role and in
your
an
vision for the business.
and in an expanded way.
Yes.
So, every time there was a complex discussion or something happening with a client, I would say, okay, I can go and help. I have good relationship with this client.
And presumably you were a team player across all
Yes,
departments, and that's
absolutely.
key. That's
Absolutely.
key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This definitely helped.
Of course.
And I think my curiosity helped. My proactiveness helped. My ability to bring people together, I think that was the main edge that I had.